Hello everyone, welcome to qualifying for the Spanish Grand Prix. Welcome to Norris versus Piastri. Well, that's what we're expecting it to be at the moment. I predicted earlier on it would be Lando Norris on pole position, Piastri in P2, with Verstappen changed after Friday. Because I originally thought George Russell would be in P3, but Verstappen I think might be now. We don't know. It could be all over the place. We had FP3 earlier on, we had some good running. We had Piastri half a second ahead of Lando Norris. Lando Norris a couple of tenths ahead of Charles Leclerc. Then it was George Russell, Verstappen, Hadjar with a brilliant session, Antonelli getting closer to his teammate than Alonso, finding some good form. Hamilton struggling with shifting problems. Lawson also in the racing ball having a good session for that car. Bortoletti and Hulkenberg definitely looking to be going quite well this weekend. And then it's Sainz down the order after a pretty tough FP3 session, with Albon not getting basically any running at all in the session, which is pretty tough to take, but it's what it is, and now they've got to try and build on what they kind of don't have really. It's going to be very, very tricky to deal with. Alright, the cars leave the pit lane. And we get ready for the first couple of laps here on Saturday afternoon in Barcelona, 4 o'clock local time, or 4:01 right about now. Albon currently, as I was talking about the Williams just a second ago, Alex Albon effectively out on track, just completely blind. Missing out FP1 due to Victor Martins taking that FP1 session away, and then missing out on the crucial FP3 session as well, as they had some issues. I'm not entirely sure what those issues were, but something that kept them in the garage. And now they're out pretty early to try and get some running in as much as they can, or as quickly as they can. It's going to be definitely the best strategy for them. The car that did get some good running in was Carlos Sainz, and Carlos was in the pit lane for a while. I think it was either FP1 or FP2, and then they just didn't have the pace in FP3 earlier today. So Williams have got a lot to think about, a lot to do. Not a lot to lose, but a lot to gain, as they want to try and get themselves back into the points if possible. We also have the Haas's, who have got a lot to do as well. So far this weekend, not really showing the pace, despite Esteban Ocon scoring points in Monaco last weekend. On the up as well, scoring points last weekend was Hadjar, with Lawson following. And they are definitely looking to be further up the order. So look out for those guys when they go out on track. Colapinto goes first. It's Ocon behind the Argentine driver. And then we will get Oliver Behrman, who goes behind his teammate by a couple of tenths or so. And then it's Lance Stroll and Alex Albon. Alex Albon, you'd expect that Williams to go ahead. Well, Lance Stroll finding some pace so far in that Aston Martin, as Fernando Alonso has been finding some good form in that car recently. But here we go with the Thai driver around the final corner, purple in the first sector, across the line as they push immediately, but they do not beat Lance Stroll, despite going faster in the first and final sector. It was only by small margins, and they lost out just over a tenth in that middle sector, which was enough to prevent them from going to the P1 spot. Sorry for that. Hey, if you forget the better of me. Gotta love it. Alright. Waiting to see a few more cars out on track. As you see, Sonoda leave the pit lane. Saubers are also on their way out. Colapinto's in the pit lane after setting their lap. And the McLarens will also be darting up. Mercedes, Racing Bull, everybody has made all of a sudden the call to leave the pit lane. They were hoping to get ahead, but now they are going to be waiting in the pit lane exit to try and prevent themselves from getting stuck in the traffic. And the reason why they do that is because of the minimum delta time that you have to abide by, but if you sit on the pit lane exit and don't go onto the circuit, you can basically wait for the other car to go and get a gap, and then you can go for it. So that's what they're doing. That's why they go slowly on the pit exit. That's why they all queue up in the pit lane, not because they want to, but they kind of have to, really. Otherwise, they end up having some problems. Why is that? Well, in Monza, we had some terrible, terrible times in qualifying where all the drivers were trying to go slower than each other to get the slipstream due to the circuit being so straight line speed dependent, and if you could be in the slipstream of another car, you get a massive boost in the straight line. I remember in 2019, everybody was just basically just cutting corners and slowing down on track to do this, and then we saw a load of cars miss out to compete for pole position. And it's also dangerous, of course, so that's why it's been called in. Lots of cars out on track now, a little bit more busy. Let's see what the McLaren can do. Lando Norris going fastest in FP2, I believe it was. Maybe FP1 as well. I'm going to double check that for you right now. FP1 and FP2. FP2 was Oscar Piastri. So Oscar Piastri fastest in practice 2 and practice 3, but it was Lando Norris who was on top of the times for practice 1. It's been said that Lando Norris should have kind of a little bit of confidence around this circuit. Some have said that there's maybe not so much confidence for the Brit. Oscar Piastri seems to be very confident, although historically doesn't suit this kind of circuit relative to Lando Norris. So it's going to be a bit of an interesting one as to who's going to get pole. And I really can't say much more than that because I do not know. Purple in the first sector there for Carlos Sainz, who beats all the other cars who are currently on laps. It's Bortoleto who's quicker than their teammate in the first sector, that's for sure. Hulkenberg takes that spot for now. Bortoleto, P5. Even though they went quicker in that first sector, the middle and looks like final sector were not quite so beneficial. Lawson now in the middle sector, purple. Lando Norris takes that purple sector away from Carlos Sainz as it's Tsunoda to P4 in the Red Bull. That's not really where it should be. Purple middle sector, of course, for Lawson. Lando Norris is looking to try and take that away very, very soon, I am sure. Lawson does go top of the times for the moment. There is the purple middle sector taken by Antonelli, actually, before Lando Norris. It's Carlos Sainz who does go to P3, sets a bit more of a competitive lap time, but still fairly close to their teammate. Lando Norris now purple in that middle sector and is going to go through the final few corners. Antonelli takes their Mercedes across the line. And it's to P1 for the Italian driver by almost a tenth and a half of a second. But here we go, Lando Norris up to the top of the times. 4.5 tenths it is for the Brit. It's George Russell, his fellow countryman, looking to try and get as close as that to that as possible. And find some better form as they haven't been able to find. And that is a brilliant lap there for George Russell. And a massive gain in the final sector. Hadjar to P3. Closing up a little bit. Splitting the two Mercedes right now. Piastri in the middle sector going fastest instead. Are they going to take that top spot over their teammate? Well, Lando was only fastest in one sector now. The final sector goes to Oscar Piastri. It doesn't. It stays with George Russell. But it is still a faster time for Piastri by 2.5 tenths. That is a huge, huge gain in that middle sector. Absolutely monumental. So looking Sector 1 with Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, very, very similar. Sector 2, about just under a tenth away And then in Sector 3, a 22.2. So 2/10 slower is Lando Norris. So that Sector 3 really managed to work out quite nicely for Oscar Piastri. Charles Leclerc goes to P4, it's Alonso P6 at the moment. Hamilton a bit behind his teammate, continuing with some problems. Currently 6, almost 7/10 away from the top spot of Oscar Piastri. Verstappen staying competitive here with the cars around them as Lando Norris is just pipped by 0.001 second, 1,000th of a second by the Dutchman, who I predicted to qualify P3 after FP3. Alright, sorry for the delay. We're ready to go now. 4 minutes on the clock, and this is where we see the bottom 5 drivers get knocked out of the session here in qualifying. You cannot drop the ball at this point of the session. If you do, you start last. Every team is going to be going out. If you see the fastest cars leaving the pit lane, then everybody needs to leave the pit lane to go for another qualifying lap. The track is rubbered in, and we're going to see the cars go very, very, very quickly here in the final stages. Of course, the gravel traps are not too far away, just in case you make a very slight error, as they will catch you, they will hold you back, and they might throw your car into the wall if you don't ask nicely for it to not. Lando Norris will be the first car to set their next, or final lap I should say, but everybody else is currently just stacked up in the pit lane. Looking at the order we have so far before the final runs, it's Oscar Piastri with a 12.5. It's Max Verstappen in P2. Then we've got Lando Norris, George Russell, Charles Leclerc, Alex Albon, Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton, Isaac Hadjar, and Oliver Bowman in P10. Then it's Colapinto, Antonelli, Gasly, Stroll, and Lawson. And then the drop zone as of now is Hulkenberg, Ocon, Sainz, Tsunoda, and Bortoletto. After FP3, didn't expect the Saubers to be in this position, to be honest. Really didn't expect the Saubers to be in this position. Alpine having a bit of a problem, it looks like. Is that with Colapinto stuck in the pit lane exit? I don't know if they're going to be able to get going or not. Having some clutch problems, potentially. Currently, Sainz in the drop zone, Ocon in the drop zone. Both being beaten by their teammates, so is Tsunoda. There's a lot of cars that need to do a lot more. But Lando Norris is coming into the final sector now. And a 21.6. They're not actually going any faster than their previous best. So are they going to dive straight back into the pit lane or go again? 2 minutes remaining of the session. Lando Norris comes around the final corner and they go and set their lap time. And that's going to be a fair bit slower. So a warm-up lap, interestingly, around Catalunya when the circuit is so boiling hot and the tyres are absolutely cooking. Here we go. Bortoleto across the line for the Brazilian driver, and they will get themselves surely into Q2. A brilliant, brilliant lap. It's Hulkenberg as well finding their heart at the Sauber up the order as well. Looking really, really clever right now. Antonelli going purple in the middle sector. They're trying to make sure they are safe themselves. Colapinto will be out as they did not make it out of the pit lane, and they are at risk of losing out here. Antonelli to P5. Couldn't quite make it in the first and final sector, but still looking quick. Sainz is improving here. They're doing well. 1 minute on the clock as we see a few cars go again. Lawson begins. They need to get themselves into the next part of qualifying. The Racing Bull package has been strong so far. They cannot afford to lose it. And that's Gasly up to P9. That should be enough now as a few cars set their laps. Sainz should be safe to get into the next part of qualifying. Looking at them coming through the final few corners, what's it going to be for the Spaniard who looks to try and score points in every single home Grand Prix that they've ever competed in? They get themselves into the next part of qualifying for the time being, but 13th isn't that strong. We've got Lawson, Ocon improving. Tsunoda starts their final lap of the session. Hamilton's going to cross the line. What can the Brit do there? They go up to P9, pushing Sainz down to 14th. Here we go, though. Liam Lawson, final corner for the New Zealand driver as they do cross the line and go to P7 nice and safely. Pushing out Oliver Behrman, who's going quickly, and this is going to be it. Sainz could be done. Esteban Ocon and Oliver Behrman currently in the drop zone, but they're improving. Lance Stroll improving as well. Yuki Tsunoda, the final one. No one is safe, and we could see a lot of cars out. It's Esteban Ocon who pushes Carlos Sainz out of qualifying in Q1. A disaster for Williams already this weekend. It's going to be Behrman across the line as well, and they do it. They get the job done to P11, but they push out their teammate in the process. Absolutely brutal stuff right here. Yuki Tsunoda, final sector here. Lance Stroll is going to be following suit as well. The Red Bull across the line. DRS. What's it going to be? Oh, it's not enough. P19, Stroll crosses the line and they get in. It's Yuki Tsunoda, last place by 0.5 of a second. It's Lance Stroll to P7. Absolutely phenomenal. They push out Hulkenberg, and Hadjar and Lawson, who were looking so strong earlier on, are lucky to still be in. It's Fernando Alonso, who's a little bit further back than they would have hoped, with Lance Stroll taking full advantage of being last on the order, with the track being as quick as it's ever going to get, nice and rubbered in. We see Hulkenberg lose out to their teammate, their rookie teammate, Gabriel Bortoleto, one of the most experienced drivers of Nico Hulkenberg. Should not be in that position. It's Esteban Ocon down in P17, looking like they had the job done as they beat Carlos Sainz, but Carlos Sainz followed them as well, P18, whereas Alex Albon is P9, who didn't get basically any running in FP1 or FP3, so now the only car that Williams have in qualifying to try and get them into the top 10 is a driver that has had 1 hour of driving effectively. Absolutely crazy stuff right now. Of course, Alex would have been involved in FP1 on the pit wall, and in FP3 they would have still been doing some things to try and prepare as best as they can. But their only time in the car was FP2 yesterday. Of course, the biggest talking point right here is Max Verstappen, who is currently 2.5 tenths away from the fastest car on the grid, and Yuki Tsunoda, who is half a tenth away from the next slowest car on the grid, which is Colapinto, who didn't even get a final lap in, as they once again have qualifying troubles. Colapinto is having those issues in the pit lane, and that's their job done, or day done, and they'll have to wait for tomorrow whether they'll get any penalties, grid penalties, for any changes with that car. I don't know, but Tsunoda, I don't know what to say other than I am worried for their career. That's really not good. Currently, all that the changes have really done at Red Bull over the last season or so, after dropping Sergio Perez, is made Sergio Perez look like an absolute legend. Really improving Checo's stock, I guess, as a driver, you could say, and making them a very, very appetizing option for the Cadillac team when they join in 2026. Looks like Yuki Tsunoda's struggling throughout the lap, to be honest. Not able to get the car turned into the corners. Struggling to get that car rotated in any apex effectively, and then having really bad balance issues in the final sector when they do try and get it turned in. So not having the grip when they want it, and that's what makes you P20. Really devastating from Yuki Tsunoda. Not exactly driving the car badly, it just seems to be that they've maybe gone in the wrong direction with the setup as they try and compensate for other things with the car. I don't know exactly what the specifics will be on that one, but Yuki Tsunoda not having the best day at all, and they are going to be frustrated. So much for me making that statement earlier on Friday, saying that Red Bull should be able to work together in the race, as Max Verstappen isn't going to be able to, or isn't expected to be able to compete for pole position. Well, maybe, just maybe, now they might actually have an opportunity at competing for pole position, or the front row I should say. Whereas Yuki Tsunoda will not be able to be a rear gunner. Just looking at the weather predictions right now, I don't think we're going to get any chance of rain. 5% today, 10% later. The clouds are out. The track is going to be a bit cooler because of that. But other than that, we've got no problems. What have we just witnessed then in Q1 as we start Q2? Well, the grid is incredibly close. I said this is the session, or the part of the qualifying session, where you really can't afford to drop the ball. Otherwise, you will start last. Yuki Tsunoda, well, they didn't necessarily drop the ball. They just didn't have the performance in the car in the way they were trying to drive it, and that's them done with the session, of course. You know, Formula 1 is a lot closer these days than it has been in previous years. Immensely close in qualifying. And I'll tell you what, it sometimes makes these qualifying sessions even more exciting than the actual races. Alrighty, Q2 begins. 13 minutes on the clock. The 18-minute session of Q1, of course, has just been 15 minutes in Q2, and then it is 12 minutes for Q3. The sessions get shorter and a little bit more manic, but the cars on the track are fewer and the traffic is easier to navigate through. Alex Albon, the car to go out first, to set the first lap of the Q2 session, as they were to do so, or at least first to go out in Q1 because of their lack of running. They're really in a compromised position, trying to make the most of the session to give themselves the best comfortable ride and the best chance of actually getting into Q2. Now they're having to look at Q3. And actually, with Albon qualifying P9 in Q3, they actually do have it, or sorry, Q1, they do actually have a chance of getting into Q3. So, Alex Albon is strong, very, very strong. And they've managed to obviously do some good things in the garage despite not having much running. So, prepared themselves well. And they will be happy with that, I'm sure. Of course, they've driven a Toro Rosso, a Red Bull around here, and a Williams. They drove the Red Bull in testing in 2020 around this circuit. They never drove it in a race. Due to COVID restrictions, of course, I don't think we drove here. Or did we? No, we did. So they did. I'm absolutely waffling. I remember that race now. One of the most boring races I've ever watched. Yes, it was a pretty boring race. But Alex Albon was racing for Red Bull around this circuit. So they have got some experience in various different cars. And I'm sure they can understand what the circuit's like, and then they just need to get used to the car. As most drivers do as well, of course. Oliver Behrman sets the next lap of the session at 13.6. Compared to what we've seen on Friday and earlier today, these lap times absolutely rapid. But, of course, we're going to see probably these cars go into the 11-second margin. Fastest Q2 time last year, 11.6. Q1 was a 12.1. So we are yet to beat that here in Q2. But the 11.6 is where we're looking for. And then the 11.383 was the pole time in Q3 from Lando Norris. Those are the timings we're looking to beat compared to last year. And I'm sure we can get the job done. Purple in the first sector for Bortoleto ahead of Verstappen. So Verstappen, although purple in that first sector, we'll have a look at the gaps. 21.6 to 21.6 very, very close to Bortoleto, managing to find a decent first sector. 28.8 and a 21.8 as well. Bortoleto 29.1, so missing out on 3/10 in that middle sector where it gets really tricky on the traction and the technical section of the circuit. And then the final section of the circuit, of course, Sector 3. The part of the circuit where you really test if you've got a good race car. DRS across the line here for Bortoleto. And they go to P2. They do get the job done, go to P2, but they are 6/10 away from Max Verstappen, almost 7. There's a half a tenth ahead of Liam Lawson, who set a lap time. Lance Stroll also has set one recently. But Lando Norris going purple in that first sector. Gasly up to P2, finding their way in to Q2. After a miserable practice session so far, after a very miserable Monaco Grand Prix, they've really had some bad form in recent times. Not really some of it of their own fault, but some of it is of their own fault. And there's Lando Norris across the line. We waited to see it happen, and we get to see it happen. Hamilton actually beat Lando Norris's first sector by a couple of hundredths of a second, but it's Piastri who's taken it away by about a tenth of a second from Hamilton, just a bit more. So the McLaren is still the quicker car, but Hamilton's found some pace there. Will they be able to carry it through the lap? That's the question. Well, their teammate is going to be coming across the line as they go around the final corner. What's it going to be from Charles Leclerc? And they go to P3, 4/10 away from Lando Norris. Lewis Hamilton, quick in the first sector. What can they do now as they cross the line? And that is going to be ahead of their teammate by half a tenth of a second. Lewis Hamilton finding some surprise pace. Here goes Piastri, looking to go fastest. And they do so by half a tenth ahead of their teammate. The McLarens are on another level compared to the rest of the field right now. Antonelli and Russell are going to try and say something about it if they can. As they cross the line, it's Antonelli to P8. And it's Russell looking to try and beat that. And they do go fairly competitively to P4 ahead of the Ferrari. So Antonelli struggling a little bit there. George Russell finding some good pace. Very good pace, 21.4 in the first sector. But it's still half a tenth away from Verstappen and 4/10 away from Oscar Piastri. The McLarens are going to be fighting each other. Verstappen and Russell are going to be fighting each other. Currently, except from the two McLarens are the wrong way round, my qualifying predictions aren't that far away. Of course, the Ferraris are also swapped around, and Antonelli is a little bit low. But it's coming together a little bit. It is only Q2, and my predictions for Q3. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Who are we expecting to be knocked out here in qualifying? Well, relative to what we've seen in Q1, Behrman could be out. We could see Albon out. We could see Bortoleto, Lawson out. Maybe Hadjar. Gasly's finding some good pace. I'd be surprised if they do make it through, however. Russell reporting there could be a chance of rain, even though there has been no confirmation of rain by any weather forecast. Would there be any opportunities for a few drivers to capitalise? Well, I'll tell you what, I reckon what we're going to see exactly this. We're going to see everybody rush out of the pit lane when it gets to the start of Q3. Everybody's going to try and get their lap in. If Alex Albon is in Q3, they're just going to go straight out as they have done so far. Russell says he's confident that he's through to the next session, 4/10 away from Piastri. And he claims that he's willing to help his teammate get into the next part of qualifying. So that is a big statement there for George Russell, saying that they feel confident, comfortable with that car, How will it be as a race car on Sunday, though? Imola showed to not be such a good race car. That is the question, of course. But it's Antonelli who's close to the drop zone. Position-wise, but still a couple of tenths ahead. About 3 tenths away from Bortoletto, advantage-wise. 4 minutes on the clock, and now you see all the teams wait for the perfect opportunity to get ready for their final laps. No one out on track at the moment. Completely clear. Would you believe it? Drivers complaining of traffic throughout the practice sessions. So far we've had no traffic issues or impeding issues, and everybody's waiting in the pit lane. Reports showing that they're confused at why no teams are rushing to leave the pit lane, because the clouds are pretty dark and it looks like it's very, very gloomy. But they seem all good to go. I think it's going to be Q3 where it really matters of whether we might see rain come in and shake up the order. It's George Russell who Ooh, it's George Russell who stays in the pit lane. Finally got it there. As he's waiting for Antonelli to begin their lap. So, George Russell, I expect them to leave the pit lane in a moment to give maybe Antonelli some DRS or some slipstream down into turn 10 into the hairpin. It's a risk, of course, if you give your teammate a massive slipstream, then they can end up outbraking themselves if they've got too much speed in that car. Lance Stroll will be the first car to set the final laps of the session, of the Q2 segment of the session here. 2 minutes on the clock. The Aston Martin showing some really good form, and I think they're hoping to get into Q3 with the performance they've had so far. Alonso as well, of course. They've been fairly even throughout this weekend so far, despite both drivers struggling throughout, trading positions. The Aston Martin is really looking quite quick, but it's just not had the reliability or the luck so far. Stroll improving in the first sector though, and looking to try and do what they did in Q1 and absolutely jump up the order, as they're currently sat in P14. Second to last from Oliver Behrman, the sole Haas in this session so far. And it's not going to change, but it could continue. That's their question. Lance Stroll navigates the traffic and now navigates the final sector of the race circuit through the, I don't know how many right-handers you got there. 3 right-handers, the triple right-hander. Keep going right, keep going right, keep going right. Slow the car down, go right a little bit more. DRS available, across the line for the Aston. And it's going to be, ooh, not enough. Lance Stroll is going to be out of qualifying here in Barcelona from Q2. They will not make it in. It's Antonelli who doesn't get any slipstream from George Russell. They will cross the line. They will go P8. The pit lane is still for the top 5. No one out right now. That's Piastri, Norris, Verstappen, Russell and Hamilton all feeling like they're safe at the moment. Behrman is yet to start their final lap. We've got Albon, who's currently improving. Lawson improving. Stroll, of course, we know is out, as they did improve, but not enough. Albon to P10. I don't think they're going to make it into Q3. They've got Hadjar, they've got Lawson, they've got Bortoletto, all improving. Bortoletto across the line. And they do not make it. P11, beating Hadjar for now. But Hadjar's going quickly, and he's coming across the line next. The Frenchman looks to try and continue their brilliant form in Formula 1. They cross the line, and it's going to be Isaac Hadjar into Q3. Albon will miss out in the Williams. They will be completely gone. Liam Lawson tries to follow his teammate now. They make it through cleanly. The final corner is available. DRS is available across the line. Oh, and it's not enough. Liam Lawson is out. P13, and they will be stuck there. Oliver Behrman still looking to set a lap here. A very, very late call for Oliver Behrman right now. 4 tenths away. Looking like they're going very quickly. So Gasly's not safe. Looked like it could have been a good lap for Pierre Gasly, but no. Oliver Behrman currently on Q, if they can make it work in the final sector, to take it into Q3 and absolutely embarrass Esteban Ocon. DRS are across the line, and it's going to be Behrman struggling in the final sector massively. Absolutely massively. And ends up missing out and will be P15. Esteban Ocon not embarrassed as much as we could have expected. It's Oscar Piastri who tops the times with an 11.9. We see the 11-second lap times now for the first time. It's Lando Norris in P2. It's Verstappen. Russell Hamilton looking really quick. Hadjar P6 beating his teammate. Leclerc in P7 for Ferrari. Then it's Alonso, the sole Aston Martin. Antonelli lucky to be there in P9. And Gasly very fortunate to be into Q3 as Albon just misses out on the back foot this weekend. They've done a very good job to try and get the job done. They actually made a mistake in the last sector, and that is what has knocked them out of the session in the end, wrestling the wheel as they go through the right-handers. Alex Albon complaining about a dirtier in the final sector from the Haas. That's what caused them to lose out. Well, you know what? That margin might have been enough. If they got distracted as well, that might have been enough. But I'll be honest with you, the distance between the cars, it's probably not dirtier that will have made the difference there. You could see the Williams was wrestling at the wheel a little bit. So that's what's going to make it pretty difficult to manage. We see the next 5 cars be knocked out. Alex Albon, Bortoleto, Lawson, Stroll and Oliver Behrman in P15. Behrman apologises, says that's all they could do with a used tyre. Unfortunately not enough, but looking quick though in the first part of the lap. Gabriel Bortoleto very, very happy with the session despite being knocked out in Q3. They start P12, close to the points paying positions and beating their teammate. It's been kind of not underwhelming, but not really spectacular for Bortoleto. They've not had a massive platform to really perform in that Sauber car. But they have got an experienced teammate to try and outperform. And so far, they've done it. Did they do it in Monaco as well? I'm not entirely sure if I'm remembering that correctly. But Gabriel Bortoleto is definitely showing that he has got what it takes in Formula 1. Doing a very good job. We're just going to double check what we saw in Monaco from the Saubers if we can. Race result wise, it was Nico Hülkenberg P16, Bortoleto P14. They were close to each other, but it's qualifying of course that matters in Monaco. So it was Hülkenberg in P13 and Bortoleto actually P16. So Hülkenberg lost a lot there in qualifying. They were the only one to get into Q2 out of the Sauber cars. If you go a race back into the triple header that we've got right now, it's also Nico Hülkenberg ahead of Gabriel Bortoleto by a fair bit as well. Actually, Gabriel Bortoleto, the last car on the grid in the end after struggling. That was Nico Hülkenberg actually starting behind Bortoleto though in qualifying. It was Q2 for the Brazilian driver, whereas the German driver Q1, they were knocked out there. So Hulkenberg definitely has the edge here in qualifying, in the race, whereas qualifying not so much, but it's just so tough in Formula 1. You need that experience. Currently, Hulkenberg has it, and they are using it to make sure that the Brazilian driver knows who's boss. Right now, though, not really made it any easier for his race tomorrow. On Sunday, for the Grand Prix. Now, Q3 is upon us. We wait for the green flag. We wait for the call to go out. It's Oscar Piastri who went fastest in Q2. It's Lando Norris, Verstappen, Russell, Hamilton, Hadjar, Leclerc, Alonso, Antonelli and Gasly. We've only got one Red Bull, one Racing Bull, one Aston Martin and one Alpine in the session. Other than that, we've got both Ferraris, both Mercedes and both McLarens. McLaren doing exactly what they need to do, Verstappen doing exactly what they need to do, Russell doing exactly what they need to do, Hamilton doing a very good job considering the weekend they've had so far, finding qualifying quite nice compared to the qualifying king of Charles Leclerc, who's been beaten by the Frenchman of Hadjar, who is performing masterfully in Formula 1 at the moment, whereas his teammate P13, pretty disappointing if you think about everything relative. However, the gaps in Formula 1 these days, as we talked about in Q1, are so close that you can find yourself out very, very easily. Gasly, lucky to be in Q3, as it just seemed to be that no one managed to pull it together when we got to the kind of final minutes of qualifying. It just really didn't seem to be that many drivers were improving, and Gasly was able to do enough to get themselves into this position. Do I reckon they'll start at P10? Probably, unfortunately, but it's still a very good achievement for the Alpine, who has had some pretty tough running recently. Green light. Let's go qualifying. Let's go and set the fastest laps of the session. Will we see a lot of cars dive out of the pit lane and rush in case of the rain? Well, no, is the answer. We've only got a McLaren actually on its way. And we don't have Alex Albon to take us for the first lap of the session. Oscar Piastri will take the honours. The championship leader, looking to try and set the pace here. By 3 points only after Monaco. Lando Norris taking victory, P3 for Oscar Piastri behind Charles Leclerc as well. It's McLaren who lead the way with Mercedes in P2 in the Teams Championship. Red Bull, Ferrari, Williams, Haas, Racing Bull, Aston Martin, Alpine and Sauber making up the order. But it's all about qualifying now. What did we see in FP3 earlier on? Well, we saw a 12.3. We've destroyed that already. What did we see last year for pole position? It was an 11.383 from Lando Norris. Can they repeat it again? Oscar Piastri, well, they were nowhere really to be seen. P10 and a DNF from Q3. It was Max Verstappen who competed for that pole position by, well, missed out by a couple of hundredths of a second in the end. So looking to try and better that a little bit more. The Mercedes were then strong, followed by the Ferraris. Considering Russell and Hamilton right now, it looks to be possibly the same story. But it's whether Antonelli and Leclerc can follow their teammates from their qualifying performance so far, which has been absolutely perfect from George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. There's Piastri starting the lap. The clouds are definitely over the circuit right now, and it could be a very, very tough session. I bet you, though, it's still boiling hot in Spain. I don't bet you, I'll tell you, 29 degrees in the air right now in the clouds. You'd think that it's going to be a little bit easier, a little bit calmer, a little bit cooler, but no, it's still just as hot. It's just a little bit gloomier. It's Piastri, who's not looking gloomy though, with the timing sheets currently purple in the first sector. DRS down into turn 10, their teammate just ahead of them, Lando Norris, having to get a shimmy on, otherwise they're going to give their teammate some dirty air. They move out of the way, not the best thing to do, but they did move out the way eventually. There's Oscar around the final corner. It's going to be Lando Norris getting a massive tow when they start their lap as they follow the final corner. They'll sit right behind him. DRS available for Piastri, who crosses the line to go fastest. The only car to set a lap is Lando Norris, who got that mini tow right there. They're going to have a huge advantage because of that, and they will get a brilliant banker. It was Oscar Piastri who pulled to the right-hand side immediately and slowed down to prevent his teammate from getting any more of an advantage. There is George Russell, purple in the final sector, by a decent margin considering the circumstances. Verstappen goes to P3 behind the Brit in the end. 2.5 seconds, 2.5 tenths I should say, and actually maybe my original predictions with Russell being ahead of Verstappen is going to be the better prediction. Lando Norris does go purple in that first sector as expected, into the second sector and finishing it off into the final, as they are currently ahead by only 1,000th of a second on Oscar Piastri, after the middle sector isn't quite so competitive compared to their Aussie teammate. The final two corners come upon them. They go out the final corner. DRS is available. They will not pull it to the right. They will pull it to the left, and it will be pole position for now for Lando Norris. They gained a little bit more time in that final sector. Not much at all, though. 0.017 seconds. They gained 16 hundredths of a second in the end to add to what they had from that sector 2. And the banker is going to be, I'm sure, pretty important for some safety for now. Leclerc looking pretty quick. Russell not happy with the team's decision making, asking for a few things to be done. And now they're 2 tenths away. They said that they could gain 2 tenths and they could be in the fight for pole position, but now it's not going to be the case, and he is frustrated, I'll tell you that for sure. Leclerc goes to P4 ahead of Max Verstappen by almost 2 tenths. Yeah. It is Oscar Piastri calling Lando Norris cheeky on the radio there, as expected. It was very cheeky, and he's gained a bit of an advantage by doing so. A very, very small advantage nonetheless. And now the games will continue. The mind games have begun already. and it's all about who can get the job done. Will the Fury be lit up in Oscar Piastri to get the fastest lap? Will Lando Norris continue to try and find everything they can in this session to get on top of their teammate and have a go at bringing that championship back to their hands, back to their lead? Alonso, currently the only car out on track right now, is improving. 4 minutes on the clock, going very early, 2.5 tenths away in the first sector, looking to be about P4 if they were to continue, but they would have to basically match the middle and final sector of the fastest car on the grid right now. So that's not really too relevant at the moment. They go into the second sector to finish it, and they go into the final now of the third sector. Currently, 4 almost 1.5 tenths away. So they would be sat in P5 as it stands ahead of the reigning champion, the two-time champion, the double champ. 2 more corners to go. Wrestling with the car a little bit. And across the line there for Fernando Alonso. And they go to P5 ahead of Max Verstappen to set a brilliant lap time in the end. And they really put it together in that final sector. That is absolutely mega from Fernando Alonso in the final sector. We've got the McLarens leaving the pit lane once more. We've got Fernando Alonso giving the home crowd something to cheer about. Enjoying that one, definitely, especially since their other home hero, Carlos Sainz, who scored points here at Spain, at Barcelona, in every single Grand Prix they've competed in, who's now down in P18. They've got to have an absolutely masterful race, which isn't impossible with the strategies that are going to be made this weekend. It's going to be absolutely brutal. Currently, Leclerc is out of the car. Fernando Alonso, P5, but really happy with that lap. And I'll tell you what, that's incredible. That final sector from Fernando Alonso is insane. In an Aston Martin compared to a McLaren, unbelievable. Well into his 40s and still absolutely destroying some of the field. Now, almost everybody out on track except from Russell and Leclerc. Leclerc was out of the car just a couple of seconds ago. So I do believe the Monegasque driver is out of this qualifying session. They will not improve anymore. That will be job done. P4 for now, 3 tenths away from the top 2. Hamilton, their teammate, is out on track. However, it's Verstappen who leaves the pit lane. Were they actually starting their lap? Nope, they leave the pit lane. It's Russell who does leave the pit lane. It's Alonso who now goes into the pits. And everybody, except from Charles Leclerc, that it hasn't set a lap, is now out on track. And when I say set a lap, a final lap. Hadjar currently hasn't actually got a lap done. So they're going for their first time lap of Q3 and they have to make it work in one shot. All the other cars are going to be warming up their tyres, making sure they're good to go. Verstappen is going to have to allow Hadjar to go through. Is Hadjar going to get a bit of a slipstream from the Dutchman? The Dutchman goes probably to the right-hand side as they go up the hill to turn 9 and move out the way. No, they will sit on the apex or just to the outside. Very, very uncomfortable position to do that. And Hadjar will go through anyway. Going to be a little bit frustrated by that positioning, but into the turn 10 hairpin. They come around the final few corners and they will be the first driver or the second driver after Fernando Alonso to set their final runs here in qualifying. Purple in the first sector for Lando Norris as we continue to see Hadjar go through the final few corners. What can be done by the Frenchman? 2 Frenchmen in this Q3 session. Hadjar to P5 ahead of Fernando Alonso. They will beat Fernando Alonso at least. Piastri in the first sector is now faster than Lando Norris by a bit of a margin. Lando Norris to set their lap time first, currently on cue to improve by a tenth, but they don't improve in the middle sector. it could be bad news for Lando Norris. Gasly to P5, absolutely flying in the Alpine. Another purple sector for Oscar Piastri. Lando Norris across the line. What's it going to be? And it's not going to be enough to improve. Oscar Piastri is going to come across the line. Surely it's going to be enough. The Aussie driver goes across purple first, middle. What's it going to be in the final? And third. Absolute domination. 0.2 of a second from Lando Norris. Destroyed him. Oscar Piastri flying in qualifying. Kimi Antonelli to P4. We've got George Russell, who's still yet to settle up. Hamilton as well. Verstappen improving in the middle, but not first sector. Hamilton, final corner, coming up. What's it going to be for the Brit? Oh, and it's P3 ahead of the Mercedes. Russell's got an opportunity to come back up that one. It's Verstappen who goes slowly, or not slowly across the line, absolutely rapidly across the line. A purple final sector to P3 to really give it a good effort. Here we go though. George Russell pushing with all his might. Oh, and he's not going to get Verstappen. It's P4 for George Russell. Hamilton in P5, and they beat Charles Leclerc. Absolutely incredible stuff. What a session, what a final sector from Max Verstappen, but what an overall lap from Oscar Piastri. What a session that was. What a qualifying. Well, Lando Norris tried to take advantage of the slipstream in the first lap of Q3 to give themselves a bit of a better banker. That didn't really work out in the end, did it? Oscar Piastri, the fire was lit, the 11.5 was done, and pole position was won. An 11.383 was Lando Norris's pole time, so we don't go faster here in Barcelona with the clouds looming over us. But it's all over. Oscar Piastri gets pole position with a 1 minute, 11 second and 0.546 tenths of a second. It's Lando Norris who makes it a McLaren front row lockout once again to P2. Max Verstappen charging with just under a tenth away from the Brit in P3. Then they've got another Briton right behind them, and another one of Russell and Hamilton, who are very, very close behind. Well, actually, Russell, sorry, set exactly the same lap time as Max Verstappen once again in his career, but this time, Verstappen set the lap time first and does get ahead compared to what they had in Canada last year, where George Russell took that pole position from Max Verstappen. Hamilton, of course, P5, as I just said. It's Antonelli in P6 and Leclerc in P7, who didn't get that final lap in. Gasly has given it a brilliant effort there to rag it round into P8, ahead of Hadjar and Alonso. Alonso happy with that lap. It was beaten. Still happy with the lap, but just the position wasn't quite there. And they're going to have a tough time with Alex Albon right behind them when it does come to the race time on Sunday tomorrow. A brilliant, brilliant session. I really enjoyed that one. My predictions were Norris, Piastri, Verstappen, Russell, Leclerc and Hamilton with Antonelli behind. I wasn't far off, but it's just a bit of a mix. It's just a bit of a mix. We gave it a good effort. We gave it a good effort, that's for sure. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. I do hope you enjoy the race tomorrow. I am definitely going to be enjoying the race tomorrow. It will be absolutely awesome. Watch out for the strategy. Watch out for the teammate battle for the championship lead. That is going to be brutal. And, of course, watch out for the midfield coming through to try and score some points. That is going to be very, very close. I will tell you that right now. Can we see the Ferraris perform as well? Can we see Antonelli get close to his teammate? We'll see tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching. It's been a pleasure. Do join us next time. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.